Tonight's big stories. The House Appropriations Committee says the proposed confidential funds of Sara Duterte-led DepEd and OVP are among those up for reallocation to security agencies tasked to protect the West Philippine Sea.
The Bureau of Immigration is looking to modernize its operations with artificial intelligence. Is AI the way to go to improve immigration screenings?
And Canadian vlogger Kulas Jennerman, more popularly known as Kulas, will join us later in the studio for a chat about his journey to becoming a Filipino.
Welcome to the show. I'm Regina.
I'm Gretchen.
And I'm Shawn.
All right, we begin tonight with both chambers of Congress pledging to remove confidential and intelligence funds from civilian agencies and channel these funds to those that actually deal with national security. Let's start with the lower house. In a joint statement earlier today, leaders of political parties said they want the CIFs to only go to agencies assigned to protect the West Philippine Sea, noting that they view China's recent actions over disputed waters with serious concern. They're talking about the Chinese Coast Guard's recent installation of a floating barrier in Bajo de Masinloc. To ramp up response to such actions, the House lawmakers believe CIFs should go to departments engaged in surveillance. These are the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, the National Security Council, the Philippine Coast Guard, and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or BFAR. House leaders also underscore the need to secure the rights and access of Filipino fishermen to traditional fishing grounds.
All right, looks like most of the major parties are in on this. They did all sign a manifesto. Right. So let's go over the parties. There's NPC, Nationalist People's Coalition. There is Lakas CMD. There is Nationalista Party. The Vice President for Mindanao ng PDP Laban, he also signed. Unclear if the whole PDP Laban is involved. The NUP, or National Unity Party, and the Party List Coalition Foundation, or all the party lists.
So a lot of signatures on this, in this, what do they call it, a memo.
I remember when they were deliberating the CAFs, si Sandro Marcos napakabilis yung sagot niya, diba, to pass over the deliberations on confidential funds of the Vice President.
Of the parliamentary courtesy, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ngayon parang ibang-iba na yung tono ng ating mga legislators.
That's right.
Kamusta naman kaya sa Senate?
That's right. Okay, so it's not just in the lower house. Senators have also expressed intent to either slash or ultimately remove confidential funds from civilian agencies and reallocate these to security agencies.
Senate Majority Leader Joel Villanueva says that a special committee has been formed to look into agencies' proposed intelligence funds.
Isa po doon sa aming napag-usapan immediately ay may scrutinize ito, malaman kung saan ba talaga inilalagay at magkaroon ng general rule na wag nating bigyan ng intelligence funds yung mga hindi naman nangangailangan. We are not against confidential funds per se, intelligence funds per se, but we just wanted accountability.
That's a great idea. My question is, why only now? Because today is the last day of budget deliberations, right? Congress adjourns, siniday.
I think it's because yung proliferation of civilian agencies getting CIFs, it's medyo a recent occurrence. I would say the last
malaki-laki.
Tsaka malaki.
Usual naman daw yung confidential funds, but this size,
and it's spreading. It's spreading across civilian agencies.
No, I get it, but the budget was prepared more than a month ago.
Bakit ngayon
I know. If you were going to come together and decide, all right, civilian agencies should not get confidential funds, and why only now? Right?
Maybe they read social media.
Maybe that's
maybe the pressure also in the
Exactly.
house.
That's what I'm thinking.
Could also be because
the heat.
of putting it parallel with the confidential funds of the Philippine Coast Guard, which is
putting things in perspective.
That's true. Si Commodore
optics
Tariela,
together.
Yung optics have become really bad, I think. Kung yung agency mo may CIF pa.
Yeah, especially compared to the Coast Guard nga.
Yeah.
Naman, over 17 years, right? That's what they got.
In relation to that, the House Appropriations Committee says the 650 million pesos in proposed confidential funds of the OVP and DepEd are included in CIFs that will be realigned. This was confirmed by Congressman Elizalde Co, who chairs the committee. Now, in the budget hearing earlier today, tinanong ng minority lawmakers kung ready nga ba daw yung OVP na matanggalan itong confidential funds. And here's how that went.
So walang magiging violent reaction pag tinanggal, halimbawa, yung 500 na confidential funds sa Office of the Vice President.
They believe that the office can only propose on how they will do their job. And as to the approval of the proposed funding and budget, they submit to the wisdom and discretion of Congress. It is not solely for the West Philippine Sea, but also includes surveillance and monitoring that is affecting the national security.
Pero Mr. Speaker, nag-i-insist pa rin ang OVP na dapat bigyan po sila. Mr. Speaker, meron po bang mga libreng sakay na gagawin natin sa West Philippine Sea o sa mga contested na mga isla? Hindi talaga justified na mabigyan ng confidential fund ang OVP.
To weigh in on this plan to redirect CIFs to security agencies, we have with us on the show Iloilo Representative and House Deputy Majority Leader Garin. Representative Garin, thank you so much for joining us today, especially since I know it's been such a long day for you. I think you're on mute, Representative Garin.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right. So let's get to the first big news of the day, which is the reallocation of the CIFs. Could you tell us a bit of the backstory? How did this come about? And exactly what are we talking about here? Tatanggalin ba yung buong CIF from the OVP and DepEd, or we're just going to give them a little bit?
Well, this is not really just all about OVP and DepEd, no? Bilang mambabatas, nakikita naman natin na tila naabuso at marami nang nakiuso sa confidential fund. And in fairness to Speaker Martin Romualdez and the leadership of the House, yung ating mga party leaders, the congressmen are being called the voice of our people. So syempre dapat pakinggan talaga ang boses ng sambayan ng Filipino, especially when we talk about prioritization. So it's not just OVP, DepEd, but then like, in fact, even maliit lang, no? Pero yung ating OTS, na nakikita naman natin nagkaroon ng mga problema, at tila hindi epektibo yung confidential fund, though maliit lang, but it's I think around 5 million. But then we can see that medyo lumalala ang mga problema doon. So if you look at the bigger picture, if we compare the confidential fund, biglaan kasi siyang lumaki noong 2017. From 2017, it tripled. And from there, nagkaroon ng dagdag until 2020 that umabot na siya ng 4.5 billion, no? Or even almost 4.6 billion. So I believe that's the problem.
So, Congresswoman, could you just confirm for me, does that mean you're taking away all of the confidential funds, or you're gonna reappropriate this? Ika nga.
Well, just to, hindi po ako ang magdidesisyon lamang, yan yung buong Kongreso.
Of course.
Pero sa palagay ko, sa pananaw ng karamihan, dapat hindi lagyan ng confidential fund yung mga ahensyang hindi naman nagdi-deal sa issues on national security threat. Because if ever there will be a situation which really needs confidential fund, the contingent fund can augment that office. Or if there's a possibility that that specific program, kunyari nagkaroon ng outbreak, at gagalaw naman yung isang ahensya, that programs can actually be funded by the confidential fund of the existing agencies dealing with national security. But part of the implementing, it can be a whole of government approach. So we can still use the confidential fund lodge in the offices na talagang kailangan, like the OP, like of course DOJ is part of that. You have PIDEA, yan yung mga nangangailangan talaga. Even BIR, NBI, DOJ, DND, excluding the Intel Fund, no? Kasi magkaiba naman yung Intel Fund dun sa confidential fund.
Alright, Kong Janet, this is well and good, no? Kung matuloy nga itong reallocation, we'll see what where that one goes. But yung isang thing na kailangan ko talaga ng closure, and I'm sure a lot of Filipinos also want closure on this issue, na-determine na po ba ng Congress kung legal po ba yung pag-transfer ng 125 million pesos from the OP to the OVP? Kasi mukhang hindi pa nasa-settle yung issue on the legality of that, and there were debates. Would you know, Kong, kung may update na on what's the final answer?
That has been settled. It's legal. No? Walang transfer of fund, but there was release of fund from DBM to the Office of the Vice President. Linawin lang po natin, there was no augmentation, there was no utilization of savings, kaya dun nalito kasi akala nung lahat, augmentation, savings, no. The release of funds to the Office of the Vice President came from the Special Purpose Fund, specifically under the Contingent Fund. Ano po ba ang Contingent Fund? The Contingent Fund ay pondo ng Pilipinas na nakalodge yan sa Department of Budget and Management na pwedeng gamitin sa mga kasalukuyan, existing, new, or activities that are of urgent matters. Ang hindi lang po pwede sa contingent fund ay ang pagbili ng sasakyan. So yan po ang ginagamit, let's say example, yung Marawi siege. Yan po. So ang nangyari is ang contingent fund, nag-request ng Office of the Vice President, actually sa nakita namin sa mga dokumento, 4 yung kanilang ni-release. No, but out of the 4, 4 ang kanilang ni-request. Out of the 4 items that were actually requested, 2 were funded. So yun yung financial assistance, specifically medical and burial assistance program, and the social services, 96 million, and the confidential fund, which was, the amount requested was 250 million, 125 ang na-release. And if you look at the documents, ilang buwan din ang nangyari. There was exchange of, DBM can best answer that, but nagkaroon ng exchange ng dokumento para ma-assess yung pangangailangan. No? Sensing that the OVP does not have funds and the Vice President just assumed office, the DBM Secretary, the DBM recommended the amount to the President approved, and there was a release of contingent fund to OVP. In other words, kung tatanungin, legal ba ito? Yes, it's legal. Was there transfer of funds from OP to OVP? Wala po. There was release of contingent funds from DBM na pwede talagang i-release sa lahat ng ahensya. However, hindi po ibig sabihin niya na wala na at papabayaan na. It's still subject to audit and to safe measure, safety proceedings subject to any government fund. So yung social services, talagang regular audit yan. Yung confidential fund naman, it has to abide with the joint circular. Right. 2015-01.
Congresswoman, the second part of that question is, okay, there was no transfer, but was it right for the OVP to use the confidential funds for satellite offices, for instance, right? Because there are very stringent rules around the use of confidential funds. From my understanding, you can only use it for surveillance activities, paying off informants, paying off, paying for safe houses, and so on and so forth. Were they right to use that to open satellite offices?
There were 2 releases actually. One was 96 million, and this was the financial assistance subsidy for the satellite offices, especially the medical and burial assistance program. So that's the 96 billion. The 125 million for confidential fund, ay iba naman yun. And the proposal, I believe if you look at the documents, the proposal of the Office of the Vice President was for their good governance program. In other words, we await the report that is being made to COA. If I believe possibly meron na yan, no? Kasi natapos ng 2022. And if the Commission on Audit finds that it is in order, then we don't have a problem. But if the Commission on Audit finds that the utilization of the confidential fund is in violation of Joint Circular 2015-01, then yan po ang sunod na pag-uusapan. But be that as it may, as for now, klaro po yun. Yung burial and medical services was not from the confidential fund. If we look at the paper trail, nirelease ng DBM para sa social services, 96 million. Iba naman yung release for the confidential fund for good governance program. So the assessment, whether it was used with the joint circular and confidential fund, that's the job of COA. And we
Bale-
await for the report. It's actually a report that's given to the chairman.
Alright. Long story short, Kong, I guess yun lang man hinahanap ng mga tao, resibo. So may chance na makita pa ng taong bayan yung mga resibo nitong 125 million pag tapos na si COA sa kanilang mga trabaho.
Definitely. Definitely. Definitely.
Any
Ang
insight
confidential
into-
po yung specifics. Confidential yung specifics. But let's say the general purpose, ayan po naman ay pwedeng ma-reveal ng COA. But there are some items there that cannot be revealed. But the general context can be revealed. So, andyan po yan. No, let's just wait for them to give the the explanation within the bounds of law at the proper time.
No, I am waiting for closure on why the 125 million was spent in 11 days.
19 daw. They corrected
Oh,
it.
19
19
na.
we're back to 19, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Nevertheless.
But Representative, just comparing the 125 million spent in 11 days with the budget of the Philippine Coast Guard, which is around 118 million for intelligence funds for 17 years. I mean, just putting that and seeing the stark contrast of those budgets. You have an agency here focused on defending territorial waters, another agency that's a civilian agency. Your thoughts on the allocation of the confidential funds for both departments?
Which department?
Yung Philippine Coast Guard po na 118 million for 17 years at ito naman po yung OVP po na 125 million naman na gastos po within 11 days, ay 19 days.
Let me put it this way, no, para mas simple, ang confidential fund ng Philippine Coast Guard ay 10 million, no? At yan po ang kanilang pondo sa confidential fund taon-taon. Kaya napakahirap talagang lumaban ng ating Coast Guard. How can you protect our territory with that bigger funds? Now, if I may, no, with due respect, mas maganda sigurong wag nating i-focus dun sa OVP ang usaping confidential fund because it might be misconstrued as political. Mas maganda kasi i-focus na tumaas ng tumaas yung confidential fund, pero tumataas siya sa mga ibang ahensya, subalit yung mga talagang kailangang tulungan, kagaya ng Philippine Coast Guard, ay hindi naman tumaas. So there's actually a summary that I can share with you. It's out in the public. Ang importanteng usapin ngayon is paano natin matutulungan yung mga ahensyang nagsisecure ng ating teritoryo at paano naman natin matutulungan yung mga ahensyang talagang nagsusugpo ng mga sindikato at krimen at yung mga threat sa buong Pilipinas. So we need to augment. It's very clear that we need more funds. However, hindi naman mabigyan tuon ang lahat ng pangangailangan. Prioritization is now very important. So everybody is, of course, happy with the leadership of the current speaker na medyo naging bukas nga sa panawagan ng mga liderato, although we are not saying that it's not needed by the other offices who requested for such. Kasi in fact, you can still request from contingent fund kapag kailangan mo ng confidential fund. However, yung kaagad na available na confidential fund na nakalodge sa iyong departamento ay pwede ngang unahin yung mga nangangailangan.
Alright, Kong Janet, linawin lang natin, yung ba yung reason, no, kung bakit nga pumayag yung APRO committee na i-realign na itong mga CIF funds of different agencies?
Actually, medyo matagal na rin talagang napag-uusapan yan, no? Lalo na nung ating mga kongresista. And hindi naman, kasi akala ng iba na talagang hindi ina-actionan, hindi narinig yung boses. No? Ando dun talagang napag-uusapan. It's just that many of the discussions remains in the confines of the conference halls kasi mas effective yung ganoon. No? Etong mga pangyayari, no, securing our territory, naging mas aggressive na ngayon at medyo higante yung ating kalaban. Though of course, we would like to be a friend to all and enemy to none, we cannot sacrifice an inch of our territory. Pero syempre, ando doon din yung pagbabalanse ng ating ekonomiya. In so doing this, kailangan maghanap ng mga pondo na yung mga wants ay pabayaan muna at yung mga needs ay unahin. And I believe that is the thrust of the Committee on Appropriations.
Yes, nagtataka po kasi kami kanina, no, bago po magsimula tong interview natin kung bakit ngayon lang, no, in-announce nung mga different party heads at pumirma ng memo or manifesto na they're all in agreement.
Yeah, because Congresswoman, the budget was transmitted to Congress after the SONA, which was in July. And actually, we knew going into this that these are the amounts that the OVP, DepEd, and other agencies are asking for in confi funds. Tapos may committee level then. So now I'm wondering, like, why do we have to wait till the very last minute? Today, literally the last day of budget deliberations, to come out and, you know, decide to reallocate, because again, now everybody's saying all the right things, which is, oh, you know, security agencies should have more money. You know, dapat we have to be stricter. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, pasensya na po, no? Pasensya na po. But actually, Congress is doing the correct procedure because the committee hearings are at the committee level. The plenary hearings, what you are seeing now is period of sponsorship and debate. Nag-sponsor pa lang, nagdedebate pa lang. The period of amendments will be opened tonight. That is why this is timely. The period of committee amendments will be opened tonight, and the period of individual amendments will probably be open, and there will be a small committee handling that. So, hindi pa nagsisimula ang period of amendments. Kaya, mas sisimulan pa lang itong pag-uusapan. Sponsorship pa lang ang pinag-usapan dati. Parang each department, each agency will present their budget and defend them. Then Congress will analyze and assess it and look kung ano ba ang mga tama o ano ang kulang ng pondo, ano naman yung kailangan pero hindi sobrang kailangan na pwedeng ilipat lang muna. Because for every fund, for every project or PAP that you fund, you need a source.
Of course.
Okay.
Salamat sa lesson, no, Kong, for shedding light on this. Kasi nagtataka na talaga kami. Maraming salamat for shedding light on the process. Kasi iisipin yun normally, baduy, ang boring ng budget.
And you're right, we don't hear about the conversations that's happening within Congress halls, right?
Pero pwede ko maidagdag lang. Paano po ba natin malalaman na kung magkano dapat yung confidential funds for civilian agencies? I mean, what would be your basis? Given nga nabanggit nyo po, marami pong umaabuso, nakikiuso sa confidential funds. How then do you determine how much to give a civilian agency and if that agency is deserving of the CAF?
Usually kasi, the DBM base it on historical data. So bawat taon, meron yung pondo. So if you look at the historical data, halos pareho talaga siya until 2016. Noong 2017, yung total confidential fund, from 700 million, umakyat siyang bigla to 2.078 billion. Yan po yung naging first jump. And then later on in 2020, nung nag-pandemic, this doubled, more than doubled, to 4.573 billion. And this amount, more than 4 billion, has been sustained, no, hanggang dumating ang 2023 at ngayon nga sa proposed. So, in other words, yung previous ceiling, mataas, may mga ahensya like OSEC of DICT, nawala na yung confidential fund at ngayon meron sa kanilang proposed budget 300 million na confidential fund. Yung mga ganito na kailangan naman sana para sugpuin yung mga IT problems. However, yun nga meron kang historical data.
Yeah. Oo nga eh. Okay, we look forward to seeing what the final allocations will be. Thank you so much for your time. Again, we'll reach back out to you when that time comes. Iloilo Representative Janet Garin.
All right, break muna tayo. Right after that, will artificial intelligence soon find its way in immigration screening? BI officials are currently considering the use of AI in our airports. More on that when the big story returns. Keep it here.
You're also watching the big story here on One News. It's been trending lately and it seems na uso na talaga yung paggamit ng artificial intelligence o AI. Kasi kahit ang Bureau of Immigration, tinitignan na rin kung paano ito magagamit. Long lines in immigration, as you know, have been a persistent problem, especially in the country's main gateway in NAIA. That's why the Bureau of Immigration is hoping to integrate artificial intelligence in their line of work. The agency says immigration officers ideally process around 200 departing passengers per day, but in reality, they're processing almost double that figure. The Bureau may be able to start using AI once electronic gates with biometric features are installed first in international airports by the third quarter of the year, or next year rather.
Lesser na yung interaction between the passenger and the immigration officer. So lesser na ang chance or opportunity for corruption. Wala nang discretion. Masosolve natin yung whatever complaints that we are hearing.
I wonder how they're gonna do this kasi I've done this in other countries. Mayroon silang passport-less entries, pero yung nakikita kong problema is namimili sila ng passport. Biometric, right? You just scan your passport, you put your fingerprint,
No,
then
not even passport. In Singapore, they're trialing biometric, fully biometric.
so wala ng passport.
Wala ng passport.
Just-
They just your face,
Face to
your
face.
fingerprints.
That's it.
That's it. And they've already got all the information in the back end, right?
Yeah.
When you came in.
So dito, pag
Which is
AI na, wala nang mangyayari yung hihingi
Wala na
ng
hihingi na yearbook. Kung hindi pagpasok mo pa, parang fax machine.
and your certificate of employment, right? Your the deed to your house. But yes, but yes, in other countries they're already trialing that. So we
But if
we gotta catch up.
You know, if we do shift towards the biometric passes, does that mean they will have more of our data stored?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
the only thing. That's the
So
trade-off.
magiging issue na naman yung data breaches.
Data security, especially since the government, as we know, can be vulnerable to a lot of these malware,
Exactly.
hacks, right?
And ransomware. So
There are pros and cons, right?
There are. So that's exactly why tech expert Art Samaniego has weighed in on AI's pros and cons. And he said that one advantage, no power tripping and biased immigration checks. But he did say that government must ensure secure data.
Mawawala na yung mga problema na ang dahilan ay pagiging bias ng isang immigration officer sa tao. Kasi titignan niya yung itsura ng tao na mukhang walang pera to eh. So judgmental kasi yung tao. Ang AI walang ganong quality ang AI. So babasahin ng AI kung ano yung data na in-input sa kanya.
Now, aside from concerns of possible data breaches, there is also the fear of possible layoffs among immigration officers. Let's get some updates on that from mobile journalist Francis Orshaw. Francis, what exactly is the BI planning to do about this?
Shawn, the plan here is for the Bureau to have a data sharing arrangement with other countries. The immigration is hoping to have initial checks conducted by artificial intelligence from the moment someone buys a ticket. This is to help determine whether a passenger has a good record to be allowed entry into his or her country of destination. The Bureau clarified that immigration officers will not lose their jobs because they will be the ones to conduct secondary checks. Overall, the Bureau said this is part of efforts to modernize the agency, which has been relying on a decades-old manual in screening passengers. Shawn?
Thank you for that, Francis Orshaw.
Parang journalism lang, fearing layoffs, mass layoffs in the industry.
Anchors, no?
Boy, we're all natural, ha? Just in case. See, I can push her.
Nag-post naman si Miss Jane Basa, sabi niya, encouraging human connections, hashtag pa.
Oh, there you go.
Our jobs are safe.
So for now, we're real.
And speaking of jobs, President Marcos signed into law the Trabajo para sa Bayan Act to fast-track developments in the labor sector. So what is this law all about? Well, it seeks to establish an employment master plan for the country by addressing challenges like underemployment and skills mismatch. It seeks to push upskilling for workers and support small businesses through a 3, 6, and 10-year development timeline. NEDA will serve as the lead agency in crafting this employment master plan, along with DOLE and the Trade Department. So there's some
Pag
numbers
naririnig
nito.
ko, master plan na naman. Parang hindi ko alam kung maniniwala pa ako o hindi.
Well, we do know from data na tumaas yung unemployment and underemployment by 0.2% from May to June, yung unemployment tapos 11.7% to 12% naman sa underemployment. Affected dyan fishing and aquaculture, manufacturing, scientific and technical activities, tsaka mining and quarrying yung mga industries na nagkaroon ng decline in employment.
Although, parang sinasabi rin nila kasi baka things have changed and priorities have changed. So, some members of the households may have decided, like yung mga mommies or maybe even daddies, they might have decided, sa bahay na lang ako.
Kasi
But
ito
also,
din yung
I
unpaid
feel-
labor.
Yes,
Oo,
exactly.
yun
But
yun.
also, I feel like that's part of the underemployment workforce, wherein they do want to work, but they're not finding enough good quality jobs or jobs that pay well. So they decide, okay, well, just
Wag na lang.
Oh, exactly.
Hindi rin pala.
Well, there are concerns also of the K-12 graduates, whether they're up to par.
Yes, that's right. Learning poverty is still a big issue here, right?
But I recall, Reg, when we were doing a newscast, like this was maybe 7-8 years ago, lagi nila sinasabi, is AI gonna take over the jobs, yung BPO jobs, which we all know has really driven our economy, our domestic economy. And up to now, parang so far so good. They always talk about upskilling the workforce para hindi mawalan ng trabaho.
I was actually
It's
at
the
a
usual
conference just this afternoon that HSBC hosted, and their chief global economist Fred Newman, who's quite well respected in the industry, said, "Listen, AI is not going to take away the jobs, right? It's going to boost productivity. In fact, that's how they see it. It's going to make you more productive. It's going to weed out all the fluff that you don't want to have to do, the manual labor, or not the manual labor, but the low-level tasks." And he doesn't see it as taking over jobs anytime
Maybe
soon.
it's right, no? What Miss Jane Basa said, na that human connection is
Encouraging human
really-
connections is
Yeah.
important. It's irreplaceable. It is important to see the vulnerabilities of technology and what it can't. But it can also provide a lot of advantages, as you mentioned.
If we use it well. So,
true.
so the key there is you need to upskill so that the workforce actually knows how to take advantage of AI, right? So that's what HSBC was saying. Right?
Before it takes advantage of us.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
a tool, but you need the humans to still maximize it, right? So there's still some need for us.
I think
At
naman,
least
we're
for-
still above.
We do need humans to be accountable for what they say on TV, for one.
Yes.
For journalistic principles.
Yeah.
Speaking of that,
Exactly.
no, Gretchen, ito nga, parang kailan lang, nung nag-guest natin, no, si Mommy Oni or si Tony Fowler. Now, the kapisanan ng social media broadcasters ng Pilipinas has filed a complaint against the vlogger over her, quote, obscene music videos. The group says that they submitted 3 counts of violation of Article 201 of the Revised Penal Code in connection with the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012 to the Pasay City Prosecutor's Office. These charges are linked to Fowler's 3 music videos. The group pointed out that many young people are able to watch Tony's videos on social media, even though it has a disclaimer for adults only or not for children. For her part, Fowler has yet to issue an official statement regarding the cases filed against her. Meanwhile, the management of noontime show EAT has apologized for the lubid joke made by one of the show's main hosts, Joey De Leon, just over the weekend. In a letter released to the media, the EAT management explained what transpired during the Gimme 5 segment of the show last September 23. They said that some viewers interrupted or interpreted the utterance of the object to be an insinuation of suicide, which is a very sensitive and triggering subject. The whole EAT management said it is regretful and apologetic to those who were offended by the utterance. They also assured that they are one with the MTRCB in advocating for a responsible viewing experience for the public.
And up next, Canadian vlogger Kulas Jennerman, fondly known as Kulas, is now a Filipino citizen. We'll be speaking to him about his journey in becoming officially a Filipino when the big story returns.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News. After years of chronicling his adventures in the Philippines through his online platforms called Becoming Filipino, Canadian content creator Kulas Jennerman is now officially a Filipino citizen. To tell us how it feels to finally be called Pinoy, well, let's ask him. Kulas joins us live in the studio. I'm sorry, Kulas is just such a
it's just galing.
old school name.
I promise you, I didn't give it to myself. 2014, I was living with a Filipino family in a compound in Cagayan de Oro, and my unofficial manong just came loob sa bahay.
You're gonna be Kulas.
And just looked at me and was like, Kulas. And then Barkada, and then social media, so...
But there's so many other Kulases.
Usually ang Kulas, Nicolas.
Yeah.
Not Kyle.
Swerte na ko though, because it's really like madali. You know, when you go around, like, ano pangalan mo po? Kulas. Oh, Kulas. Like, you know, Kyle's like Carl, Kyle.
What made you fall in love with the Philippines?
It's a very long story, but to keep it very short, I was actually working with Filipinos in Hong Kong. My background's outdoor education, and we worked a super kind of hardcore, all-day-long job, you know, that kind of drains you, and their vibe and attitude was super amazing. And then hanging out and becoming friends with them overseas kind of led me to coming to the country and just kind of instantly connecting with the way people kind of share happiness.
You know how Pinoys are, right? When we're abroad, we're like, you have to come to the Philippines. Did they do that? And did you bite?
Well,
was that how you ended up here?
No, 100%. That's the reason I came to the country was because Filipinos overseas were talking about the country in a positive way. And I mean, that shaped my whole life here. And I think that's the ultimate lesson too, hey? I mean, there's 10 million Filipinos around the world. What's the most important thing you should be doing? Talking about your country in a positive way, because it drives people to want to connect with it in a positive way. So yeah,
this all makes me think, right? You heard nice things about the Philippines outside the Philippines, but here in the Philippines, sometimes, you know, some people, they're frustrated, they're tired. I'm sure you're familiar about that.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I'm not somebody who's, you know, just everything's happy and perfect. Absolutely not. But I was actually, one of the reasons why I started talking about the country in a positive way on social media is because all of my friends here were Filipino. I mean, I had no foreign national friends within the country. And I found right away, even though there's a lot of beauty around us, they were very instantly drawn to just talking about the extreme negative stuff. But unfortunately, in my personal opinion, based off my experiences around the country, you know, the good and beauty is like this. And the negative is like this, but we talk about it the other way around, you know. So I wanted to drive the conversation about good stuff.
When you started your channel and you named it Becoming Filipino, was that the goal, to officially become a
Not
Filipino?
at all. And actually, the actual reason I called it Becoming Filipino was I was having all these beautiful experiences becoming a part of my life. So prior, I never did any social media my first year being here. I was never a vlogger, blogger, none of that. Had been to 29 countries, never planned on it. But I had all these amazing things happen here that kind of shaped my perspective on life. And they were becoming a part of my life. So I wanted to share those with the world around me because I found purpose in it. So that's my Becoming Filipino. But, you know, magically enough, it really did also...
You seem to have a fondness for the lesser-known areas in the Philippines, the more dangerous ones. I went to Jolo and people were telling me, you have to meet Becoming Filipino. I went to Basilan and people were telling me, you have to meet Becoming Filipino because, you know, everywhere I go, you've been there.
He was there first.
She feels threatened, by the way. As a content creator, she needed to get there first, and you beat her to it.
Why do you go to those areas? And I'm curious how you
get there and do it, or
how you engage with the locals. Because me, as a Filipino going there, I'm already afraid that I won't be able to tell the story the right way because I'm not so familiar with their culture down south. But for you...
So imagine my first experience down south, before ever doing any social media, was my work colleagues who are from Cagayan de Oro inviting me to go. I didn't even research. I'm like, these are my awesome Filipino friends in Hong Kong. I'm going. I went there, went whitewater rafting, you know, ate a whole bunch of food, went to had parties with them, sang videoke. Then I left the country and everybody went, you went to Mindanao? What are you doing? It's horrible, it's dangerous, it's scary, you're gonna be attacked by people. And I thought, what are you talking about? And then I researched it and that's what you hear, right? But do you usually hear about the 27 million people, the 97,500 square kilometers, the 27 provinces? You know, do we talk about that abundance of things, the 19th largest island in the world? You know, why aren't we focused on all of that, which is definitely not, you know, it's bigger than extremism.
So what have you discovered?
Oh, a lot of beauty. I mean, just even with my trips, the first time I ever went even more south, to Iligan City, Lanao del Norte, towards Pagadian, down to Zamboanga, I did it unsupported.
How did you navigate those areas?
On a scooter with Google Maps. And everything's online
you
now.
weren't scared at all?
No, because I didn't...
You didn't know to be scared.
No, because here's the thing though, you have to ease into it, right? Like, I would never be the kind of person like, hey, just randomly go to Hulu right now without talking to any tausugs, without coordinating with the tourism office. No. But what you can do is you can slowly, like, for example, kagi into Iligan City. Met some friends, we went swimming in waterfalls, felt good, learned about the area, learned what's appropriate, learned what's not. Then you take the next step. Then you take the next step. Then you immerse more. And that's how you respectfully kind of travel and go to these areas. So even me, like, I never... Before, when I was driving my scooter, I didn't coordinate with LGUs.
Yeah.
What I did is I just talked to locals slowly on the ground and just went step by step by step.
Basically, you backpacked.
Yeah, and what you find is the majority of those 27 million people in Mindanao will just guide you. They know of all the negative stuff that used to happen more often than it does now, and they hate it. I mean, I don't like using that word. Strongly dislike it, you know? And they don't want it to happen. So what do? They look after you. I would actually argue you're even more looked after down south because people are just sick and tired of all that negative stuff that's overshadowed them.
I agree with you on that.
So then even, anyways,
well,
I'll
it's
ramble,
changed tremendously.
Absolutely, even in 10 years.
In Holo and Basilan.
Even in 10 years, I've seen night and day from 10 years. Like, literally, I mean, Basilan, you just went there. I went 2017. I had tons of military presence with me. I just went to Basilan like 6 months ago to judge a singing contest in a basketball court in Isabela City. And you know who came with me? Nobody. I just hung out with my tourism friends there. You know, you can just contact the Isabela
the tourism
City
office.
Yeah, and they're fantastic. And you can just go, and I had no armed guards with me, you know, because they're getting better. Is it perfect? No, but they're definitely on the right track, and we have to support that. Right?
And
Did
so,
you? Yeah. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask. And so, at what point did you decide? All right, I'm going to change passports because
Okay.
typically,
I was going to ask the same thing.
typically, right?
Yeah.
The stories that we hear. I mean,
It's the opposite.
So
Filipinos are desperate to get any other passport, right? To the point that they would go and, you know, what we call the TNT in other countries.
well,
Did you seek it out, or
so-
was it offered?
So what happened is when the idea, I actually just kind of wondered about it at first. And then when the opportunity was presented to me and when Congresswoman Alante from Binan filed the bill, at first, honestly, I thought, is this something I deserve? Then I realized I don't have the right to answer that. It's not for me to say if I deserve it or not. I'm not Filipino. And then I thought, though, you know what? I've been here 10 years. I'm 35 now talking to you. So I've spent my entire young adulthood literally immersed in growing here, living with Filipino families in a compound, all of my barkada Filipino, and just being fully immersed from north to south, literally growing as a human. So whether I like it or not, the country really, and of course I like it, the country became a part of who I am. So then I thought, well, you know what, like, if there's ever a time it was gonna be able to happen, now should be the time when I'm young and have years to actually try and do positive things in the country with Filipinos as a Filipino. So I became very open to it, and I'm really happy I made the decision to.
So did the Congresswoman Alante call you, or?
What happened is I asked a friend randomly about it, and then she got word of it, and she looked into me more, and then she decided that, yeah, totally, and we discussed it, and we went with it. And I was really blessed that, you know, over my life here, I've been to I've been to every congressional district in the country. I've been to 82 provinces, right?
82
I've been to every single place. Yeah, I've been every single place.
You traveled more than us, probably.
So, I mean, I think as the process went through the various stages, a lot of people were like, hey, you know, in Congress or in Senate, you've been in my district. I've heard of you. You showed this thing positive. And so I think I got a lot of support that way.
Well, what do you think your mission here is? I mean, we all have our callings in life, but for you, staying here in the Philippines, apart from traveling and showing people how beautiful the Philippines is, what do you really think your life mission here is?
Well, there's 4 reasons why I do what I do. I'll go really fast. Number one, I just genuinely believe if I can introduce the people to the country in a positive way, it can have a positive effect on their life and other people's lives. Number two, a lot of my friends, like I said, very easy to talk in negatives. I thought if I can drive people to talk about positives and make them feel good, maybe they'll act in a more positive way.
When you say friends, Filipino friends or friends from other countries?
I would say sometimes in both, but genuinely most of my friends here were Filipino, so sometimes they would get overshadowed with that negative stuff. Number three, a lot of foreign nationals come here with the wrong intentions or the wrong kind of attitude or just with a lack of education about places or things. And I thought if I could educate more, it could maybe drive a more positive experience for them and Filipinos. And number four, Mindanao. I mean, I couldn't believe my home here when I started living here was represented so negatively all around the world. So I wanted to fight back at that. So that's why I do what I do. always have from the beginning, and I'll just keep doing that.
What's the charm of Mindanao for you?
I think, well, it's pretty amazing when you're immersed amongst people who have so much negativity being thrown at them, but are so proud of where they're from and want to act in such a proud way. So I think for me, that just makes me feel really good as a person to be amongst that. So that's probably what drives me there. But to be honest, I would happily have lived, City of Love, Iloilo, Cebu. I almost lived in Liloan, Cebu City. I'd happily just live anywhere in the country.
But except now you live in Davao.
Now I live in Davao Oriental, in the
tell us
province.
about it.
Sorry, say again.
Tell us about it.
Oh, it's amazing. It's a small barangay and right by the ocean on a 9-kilometer beach. It's like being in the ultimate
With
local.
Wi-Fi?
There is signal.
How many days can you go without internet?
Well, at this point in time, it's tough because I see how beautiful the internet can be when we use it in the right ways. So I like to be online. But certainly, not long.
So now that you're
still
Filipino,
trying to keep positive.
you're
even with
already
Wi-Fi.
Filipino now, Kulas. So
Technically,
hindi ka na becoming Filipino because Filipino ka na. Are you going to change the hashtag or what's next?
Somebody asked me that question, and I actually wrote about it the other day on my Facebook. Thing is, it's like when you become a doctor, when you become a news anchor, do you stop trying to become the best you can at it, or do you stop trying to become open to learning more about how you can be better at who you are and what you're doing? So for me, I guess in order to be like the best Filipino I could be, I should really becoming even more. It should be like a sense you should never stop becoming, right? So it'll never change,
Kaizen.
Yeah.
It's definitely a good reminder of how it is to be proud of our own.
That's actually what I like about Kulas's content because it puts me to shame how sometimes we hate so much on our own country and our own culture.
That's just human nature.
It is.
Really,
Isn't it? I mean, you get so bogged down by the day-to-day details that you just forget to look at the
And to
bigger
be
picture.
fair, you should never turn a blind eye to all the difficult stuff that's happening around us. I mean, I've seen a lot of it. I've been involved in trying to be a positive influence on some tough things. And, but you can always find beauty even amongst the most hardcore stuff, right?
Balanced perspective.
Yeah, just be aware, but try and make a positive impact any way you can.
And here is hoping your positivity spreads. We thank you so much for your time
Thank you.
tonight,
Salamat.
Kyle Kulas Jennerman.
For more good news, let's check in on how our athletes are doing in the 19th Asian Games. Well, unahin muna natin yung not so good news.
para
tapos na. Marjorie Didal unable to make it back to the gold medal spot in the podium in the Asian Games as she fell short in the women's street final of skateboarding. Didal, who was recovering from a fractured ankle that put her out of action for 11 months, came in last among the 8 competitors in the finals. Nonetheless, Didal is just happy to be back competing and skating once more. Over in tennis naman, 18-year-old Alex Ayala recovered after absorbing an opening set sweep for a 2-1 comeback against Japan's Kyoka Okamura in the quarterfinals of the women's singles tennis event. The Pinay tennis sensation will now advance to the semifinals, securing at least a bronze medal. Ayala will face world number 23 and top-seeded Cheng Xin-wan of China in the semifinals. And Filipino Wushu Sanda athlete Gideon Padua settled for the bronze medal in the Asian Games. Unfortunately, Padua had to forfeit in the 60-kilogram semifinal match against his Iranian opponent to avoid further risk after re-injuring a broken nose. The gold medal hopes now rest upon the shoulders of Clemente Tabugara Jr. and Arnel Mandal. Speaking of which, Mandal just recently defeated his Kyrgyzstan foe in the Wushu Sanda men's 56-kilogram match to advance to the finals and have a chance of bringing home the gold.
All right, ito pa, more good news before we go. Our big picture tonight is for all our motorcycle riders out there. I guess this includes you, Kulas, and your scooter. Here is MMDA Acting Chairman Romando Artes spearheading the launch of the agency's Motorcycle Academy in Pasig City. This academy aims to promote road safety and compliance to traffic laws. It also offers free theoretical and practical courses for beginners and even existing riders who may want a refresher. The training also includes lessons on anger management and emergency response. So this promise has also materialized.
Tama. Good news yan.
Why are you looking at me? You're gonna hit me again with a clipboard about being
Good
optimistic.
news yan kasi hindi lang para sa riders.
I
para sa
was just
non-riders.
wondering, why is that good news? Are they going to be forced to take these classes? Because it's all theoretical and practical. I get it. Pero still, it's again time
No, one,
away.
it's
Para wala nang kamote rider. Diba?
No,
Classes
I don't
will-
think it's forced.
Okay, so it's
So
just
if
an
you wanna
option.
learn how
Yeah.
the right way
Learn,
of
then you can go.
going
Because
on the
right now,
streets.
if you want to be a rider and you want to be safe and you really want to go, you have to go to a parang private school. There are schools that offer it, but you have to pay. So,
So now this is free.
I think
Yes.
this is free,
Oh,
yes. So that
fantastic.
is good news. You agree?
We'll see.
Okay, that's it for the show tonight.
We shall see.
You know, you gotta get some.
I know,
to
right?
know,
Maybe we gotta
No?
talk to Kyle more, Kulas more.
We are One News all sides all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.